Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wa imam al-mursaleen. Sayyidina wa maulana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma faqihna fi din wa alimna ta'wil waj'alna min khayrati ummati Sayyidina Muhammadin alayhi afdalus salati wa tamu taslim. Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. We seek Allah's protection from knowledge that does not benefit, from a heart that has no khushu, from a nafs that's never had enough, from an eye that does not tear, from a dua that's not heard. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, everyone's doing well. And we conclude, I can say today will be the final lesson in terms of everything that we need to cover. But we will, inshallah, have one more, which is going to be in person, and the khatam of the Seerah. And it is, personally, it is quite emotional, this journey and what we've been through. And even now as well, actually, I was just panicking trying to get a lot of stuff together, because inshallah at the end as well, I want to do, going as I've been promising you guys, the Rawdah Mubarak, the kind of the room of Sayyidah Aisha, the setup, etc. And it will be really interesting actually for people, because a lot of people don't quite understand how the setup is. Even when I was showing that video of me giving salam, and I mentioned how people get confused and they think, there's three sections of the jali, and one's for the Prophet ﷺ, one Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, one Sayyidina Umar. But no, it's not that. It's all the middle section, and then you've got those holes. But inshallah, everything will be, I'm hoping, clear at the end. I am a bit nervous because there's a lot to kind of cover on. I want to try to make it as easy as possible, and want people to understand it. So we'll get to that, inshallah. But yeah, like I said, we'll have the khatam. Inshallah, we'll do it on Friday, okay, at the masjid. I want to do it in person, so Friday, 7:30, inshallah. We'll start. But I'll send out kind of confirmation of all this a bit later. But let's continue. So we spoke last week about some of the signs that the Prophet ﷺ's time was coming to an end. Okay, the revelation on this day. I've completed your religion for you. Okay, the revelation of Surah Nasr, after which Sayyidina Aisha noticed that the Prophet ﷺ continuously engaged in dhikr. Okay, he took on a new wird, you can say, which was Subhanallah wa bihamdihi astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Okay, then you had obviously the recitation of twice in Ramadan. We already spoke about that last week as well. Mu'adh ibn Jabal, when you're seeing him off to Yemen, talking about how he probably won't see him again now. Our teacher actually gave the example when he studied a text under a teacher, actually, that what happened with the teacher would not add anything to it. Okay, but everything was understood by which part of the text was emphasized and which was not. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is when we speak about the recitations of the Prophet ﷺ reciting, Jibreel alayhi salam reciting to the Prophet ﷺ, then the Prophet ﷺ then reciting back to Jibreel alayhi salam. Okay, and this example I'm giving, obviously, that our teacher gave was that so when my teacher would be reading the text to his teacher, but he doesn't understand something, and the teacher reads it, he just reads the text back to him in a certain way, okay, to make him understand. It's like, it's clear. He'll emphasize on certain words, okay, to make it clear. So even if you recite the Quran Kareem, but you emphasize on certain words, it will kind of change how you understand. Okay, so imagine how it was when the Prophet ﷺ reciting back to Jibreel alayhi salam. Okay, remember that the Prophet ﷺ understood the Quran better than Jibreel alayhi salam. Okay, so you also have the farewell to the martyrs of Uhud, and the Prophet ﷺ, saying, I am among you now, but I will go before you. Our meeting will be at the fount. Okay, and I see it before me now. At the Hawd, our meeting will be there. So all of these signs coming about. Last week we spoke about Jannat al-Baqi and how the Prophet ﷺ was given a choice and how he has chosen his Lord. Okay, so the Sahaba, the Sahaba that obviously the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Mahiba, the one he kind of, I suppose, woke up and or knocked on the door, at night, let's go to Baqi, was actually a freed slave. Okay, so he was not someone we have heard of before this. So he wasn't the case of Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Siddiq, Sayyidina Umar, etc. This was a freed slave. This was the honor given to this freed slave. Okay, remember the Prophet ﷺ kind of freed all the slaves, but still some of them stayed and continued to serve him. Okay, they stayed and continued to serve him. Okay, and there are works that name the slaves of the Prophet ﷺ and how he freed them all, except for those, like I said, that didn't want to be freed. They wanted to stay and serve the Prophet ﷺ. Now this is the love they had for the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, then you have actually the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam. Now we've covered this before, so I won't go into too much detail. According to some ulama, actually this was the second to last time Jibreel alayhi salam came to earth. Only a few days before the Prophet ﷺ passed away. Okay, probably a couple of weeks before, and happened after all of the Quran had been revealed. Okay, like I said, we've already narrated this and we covered it as this is how we kind of started our classes. So when we started our classes, we're talking about 8+ years ago, right? We started with this. Okay, so the bare bones of it is, first hadith of Sahih Muslim, Prophet ﷺ is sitting with the Sahaba. Okay, he's sitting with the Sahaba, and a man approaches, and there's different narration actually, whether from far up he asks permission to come closer, and then every time he's coming closer and closer, he's going over the people actually, and he comes, and the way he's described, his hair is black, meaning like youth. Okay, and again we can go on and on in terms of what you take from this. Young youth, he's coming to study with the Prophet ﷺ, sitting there, study in your youth. Okay, but youth clothes were white, no signs of travel. Okay, why is this important? Because one is, no one knew him. Medina was a small area, everyone knew each other. This person whose clothes were white kind of showed that he was not a traveler. Remember we had, when the Prophet ﷺ was making the journey, the hijrah, when they reached just before Quba, they were met by the two Sawad who gave them fresh clothes, because you're traveling through the desert, you know how your clothes will become. But his clothes were white, so he was not a traveler. Hair black, so youth as well, but also the fact that there's no sand or dust, etc. in the hair, so it's clean. So he's local. He's come from he's a local person, but no one knows him. Okay, no one had seen him before. This was the purpose of kind of the way this description was given. Anyway, he comes closer and closer to the Prophet ﷺ, right? So the Prophet ﷺ is sitting. Okay, so if you can imagine, let's say, Tashahhud position, basically, the Prophet ﷺ sitting. He comes and sits right next to the Prophet ﷺ in the Tashahhud position, knee to knee. Okay, so both knees joining each other. And there's different variations because it's not clear that he puts his hands on the thighs. Okay, so, and whether he puts his hands on his own thighs or he puts his hands on the thighs of the Prophet ﷺ, but this is how close he was, okay, where he placed his hands. And he asks, inform me about Islam, okay, and the Prophet ﷺ responds, Islam is that you testify that there is no God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Muhammad is his messenger, establish prayer, give zakat, fast the month of Ramadan, and perform Hajj if you can, okay. The young man responds, Sadaqt, okay, you speak the truth. Okay? And everyone's there amazed. So what's going on here? Right? He's asking the question, okay, yet he's answering back and saying, yeah, that's the truth. Right? So they're thinking about what's going on here. Okay, then he asks, tell me about Iman. And see, you have Amantu billahi, wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rasulihi. So, I believe in Allah, his angels, his books, his messengers, okay, the last day, destiny, okay, a life after death. So you got the 7 articles of faith, and again he responds so that you've told the truth, okay, you speak the truth. Then he says, tell me about ihsan, okay, and to the Arabs, ihsan meant to give charity. Even now when we talk about ihsan, it's to be good, etc. So the Prophet ﷺ said it is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you are seeing him. If you cannot see him, know that he sees you. Okay. This time the man didn't say, so that he says, he asks another question. Okay. He goes, tell me about the hour then. Okay. And the Prophet ﷺ responded, the one being asked about it is no more knowledgeable than the one asking, which is not the same as saying I don't know. Right. And again, there's so much commentary that is done on this. Okay. Then he says, tell me about its signs. Okay? And the Prophet ﷺ says, a slave woman will give birth to her mistress, barefoot shepherds competing to build tall buildings. Okay? Then the man stood up and he left. And Sayyidina Umar said he sat there. Okay? Some narrations say 3 days, basically. And after 3 days, and the Prophet ﷺ says to him, oh Umar, do you know who that was? Okay? And the way the Sahaba would always respond to the Prophet ﷺ, even if they knew the answer, they would say, Allah and His Messenger knows best. Allah and His Messenger knows best. So even if it's a case of Sayyidina Umar kind of got an idea of who he was, because Sayyidina Umar was a really intelligent man, the response still was, Allah and His Messenger knows best. And the Prophet ﷺ says that was Jibreel. Okay? He came to you to teach you your religion. Okay? So this hadith kind of encapsulates the summary of the religion. Okay? So if someone asks about the religion, it's not just the 5 pillars. Okay, it's Islam, Iman, Ihsan, and to beware of the signs of Judgment Day. Okay, to constantly be thinking about the last day. Right. And then there's so much more to be said. We've already covered a lot of it in detail. So, like I said, I'm not going to touch upon it more. But these are, like I said, all of these signs that are coming, that the Prophet ﷺ, his time is coming to an end. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going through Martin Ling's as well, and then obviously talking about today I'm not going to go into detail in terms of the passing away of the Prophet ﷺ, so we're going to go over it, but inshallah we'll talk a bit more about it, or narrate a few hadiths, etc. Some of the narrations on the Khatam, inshallah. Okay. So you have the illness of the Prophet ﷺ. So it was at dawn that day, or perhaps the next day, that his head ached as he had never known it to ache. But he nonetheless went to the mosque, and after leading the prayer, he mounted the pulpit and invoked blessings on the martyrs of Uhud, as if so it was said afterwards. He was doing it for the last time. Then he said, there is a slave amongst the slaves of God, unto whom God has offered the choice between this world and that which is with him. Now, what I'm going to try to do is actually, so Martin Lings has his kind of version of how it is. I'm going to kind of come out with a bit of difference. So there are different versions in terms of the order, okay, the order when certain things happen. Okay, so this headache of his, this severe headache, it lasted, some say 13 days, some say 10 days. Okay, so you can almost say, the start of Rabiul Awwal. So all of these kind of is taking place, the start of Rabiul Awwal. Goes all the way until the 12th of Rabiul Awwal. All right. And the Prophet ﷺ actually would say the poison of Khaybar is closing off my waters. He would say the poison of Khaybar. He mentioned that a lot. Remember the meat that was given to him. And Ibn Masud actually says that Ibn Masud was adamant that the Prophet ﷺ was given a martyr's death. Okay, he was given a martyr's death. The Prophet ﷺ also actually, because we're talking about fever here, and he mentioned that fever is one of the punishments of hell in this world. Okay, so fever was something that you went through a lot of pain. I think it was Sayyidina Abbas mentioned that the fever, when they saw the fever of the Prophet ﷺ, they said his fever is like 10 kind of 10 times worse, like how the fever of 10 of the Sahaba would be, all together. This is how bad it was. Okay, this is how bad it was. So what happens is this fever, strong fever, it becomes like a severe, at the house of Sayyidah Maimuna. Okay, at the house of Sayyidah Maimuna. So this particular narration speaks about how the Prophet initially they went onto the pulpit and he mentioned this thing again about there's a slave amongst you, and a slave of God unto whom God has offered the choice between this world and that which is with him, and the slave has chosen that which is with God. When he said this, Abu Bakr wept, for he knew that the Prophet ﷺ was speaking of himself and that the choice meant imminent death. The Prophet ﷺ saw that he had understood, and telling him not to weep, he said, O people, the most beneficent of men unto me in his companionship and in that which he has bestowed is Abu Bakr. Okay? And if I were to take from all mankind an inseparable friend, he would be inseparable. So we're talking about Khalil here. Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ saying, if I were to take a Khalil, it would be Abu Bakr. But obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already taken him as Khalil. Okay? And this is at the point where he looks around. So remember, we've spoke about the masjid, the Prophet ﷺ. Now the way it would work was that all houses that were built around the masjid, so joining to the masjid, there was not like a separate wall, etc. That wall of the masjid was their wall, and there were entrances then coming into the masjid. And the Prophet ﷺ said at that point after this, so this thing about that he's been given a choice, now he's repeating it again. However, he's saying it as like third person. All right, the Sahaba are probably saying, Subhanallah, this person who's been given this option, and all this, but they're still not understanding that, it's the Prophet ﷺ talking about himself, right? But Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq does understand, and that's where he starts to cry out loud, and then the Prophet ﷺ praises him. Okay, he praises him, and he instructs all the doors to be closed apart from the door of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. So he had a house there as well. Remember when I showed you that video of me entering for the salam, and as you enter the door of the salam, and towards the kind of left, that's where Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq's house used to be. And what was his practice? His practice he would get up, okay, at dawn, the dawn's breaking, and he would just sit there. So imagine this now. Okay, let me just you'll understand it later on when we look at the images, etc. But imagine it this way. So you've got the Qibla direction is that way. Okay, Qibla direction that way. In front of me is the house of Sayyidah Aisha, right? Where now you've got the Rawdah Mubarak, okay? And on this side you've got straight opposite it, okay, the Qibla's there towards that direction. Straight opposite it, you've got the house of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. So he would get up at dawn, he would sit there and just sit there waiting to see the Prophet ﷺ, because when he enters the masjid, he's going to enter through that door, the door of his daughter. Okay, so he would just wait there for him to enter from there into the masjid. Okay, subhanAllah, look at that. Look at the mornings of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, how he wanted his morning to start. Subhanallah, the glimpse of seeing the Prophet ﷺ. Right, so this was the practice of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. Anyway, so all the other doors were instructed to be closed apart from Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. Okay. From the mosque, he went back to the apartment of Maimuna, whose turn it was to house him. The effort of speech to the congregation had increased his fever, and after an hour or two, wishing to let Aisha know he was ill, he went briefly to visit her. Okay, she was also suffering from, he mentions it again here, but some mention it later on. So she was also suffering from a headache, and when he entered her room, she moaned, "Oh my head, oh my head." It could also be that, when this is mentioned, could be later on when the Prophet ﷺ was, he was bedridden, and she was kind of probably teasing him as well, even at that point. "Oh my head," and he's teasing her back as well, right? And the Prophet ﷺ says, "Nay, Aisha, it is oh my head." But he looked at her searchingly as if to seek some sign of mortal sickness in her face, and finding none, he said, "I wish that it might be. He meant her death, whilst yet I was alive, that I might ask forgiveness for you and invoke mercy upon you, and shroud you and pray over you and bury you." Aisha could see that he was ill, and she was alarmed at the tone of his voice, but she tried to make light of it and succeeded in bringing a brief smile to his face. Then he repeated, "Nay, but it is, oh my head," and returned to Maimuna. So again here the Prophet saying to Sayyidah Aisha that, wouldn't you like it that it was me who was, you pass away before me, and then I can shroud you, I can bury you, I can read janazah of you and pray for you, etc. But this time it's me, it's my head, etc. It's my head that's hurting. Okay, so a number of things actually. One is that, so the Prophet ﷺ, what would happen, like I said, even up to this point, even though he was suffering, what the Prophet ﷺ would do, he would remember, he would go around to each of his wives' houses in their turn. Okay, but continuously he would keep asking. Each day, is it Aisha's turn tomorrow? Okay, is it Aisha's turn tomorrow? And they all knew, the rest of his wives knew as well, that look, there was no secret of that she was his favorite. Remember when he spoke about, and he said, look, oh Allah, don't question me about my heart. Meaning, I can't change my heart about who I like. I'll be just to everyone, but I can't change how my heart feels. Meaning, she was his favorite. Okay, so the other wives kind of got together and they agreed that, the Prophet is not well also, and he keep asking for Sayyidah Aisha. So they said that they'll give their position to their sister Aisha. So they all agreed that the Prophet ﷺ will now stay throughout at Sayyidah Aisha's house. He does not need to go to all the wives' houses, and obviously they'd come to visit him there. Okay, so they agreed to this. Then you have actually the secret farewell. So Sayyidah Fatima, his beloved daughter, who, remember, whenever she would enter, he would get up to welcome her. And she comes and the Prophet ﷺ whispers something into her ear, right? And she begins to cry. And then he says something else and she begins to smile and laugh. And Sayyidah Aisha speaks about this and says, I've never seen pure grief and pure happiness so close together as this moment. Okay, at this moment. And obviously, when they asked Sayyidah Fatima, what did the Prophet ﷺ say? She refused to tell them. Although later on, she informed that the Prophet ﷺ said that my time is up. Okay, so I'm going to be leaving you. And obviously, she felt most sadness. And but when the Prophet ﷺ then said, you will be the first one to be with me, right? Meaning that very soon after me, you will also pass away. So we will meet. You'll be the first to meet me. And that's when she, look at that, the fact that she's going to die, but she had that pure happiness that she will meet her father. Okay, so this is where Sayyidah Aisha mentioned about the happiness and the grief and happiness so close together. So then you have the kind of fifth day of illness, you could say, all right, around about this time, and the Prophet ﷺ asked them to bring cool water. Okay. And they bring cool water, and some of the describes about how much water he's brought, and then he pours the water over him. And this is one of the things that they would do to calm down the fever. They would pour cold water over themselves. So they pour cold water over the Prophet ﷺ, and then what he does, he wraps his turban tight. Okay, he wraps his turban tight because of the pain. So he wraps it tight, right? And he's kind of carried to the masjid by Sayyidina Abbas and Sayyidina Ali. Okay, so they bring him to the masjid and he sits on the mimbar. And this is where, like I said, I've already mentioned about the fact that he, there's a servant. Obviously, Martin Lings mentioned it more earlier on, but there are some narrations that this would be a bit later on. Okay, this was a bit later on. And you have the crying of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, etc. Right? Then you have the final prayers. Okay, the final prayers. So what happens is, let me just quickly mention here. Just continue a bit here. Okay, so he tried to do as he did when he was well and continued to lead the prayers in the mosque as usual, but his illness increased until the hour came when he could pray only in a sitting position, and he told the congregation that they also should pray seated. On his return to the apartment of the wife whose day it was, he asked her, where am I tomorrow? Again, he's mentioning about it, and then they all agree. Then you have that I mentioned about Usama, who actually we've already covered last week, him visiting how he didn't move on further. At the next call to prayer, the Prophet ﷺ felt he could no longer lead it even though he remained seated. So he said to his wives, specifically he said, he was talking to Sayyidah Aisha, tell Abu Bakr to lead the people in prayer. Okay, tell Abu Bakr to lead the people in prayer. But Aisha feared that it would greatly pain her father to take the place of the Prophet. O Messenger of God, she said, Abu Bakr is a very sensitive man, not strong of voice, and much given to weeping. Meaning, when he recites the Quran, he gets emotional, etc. So she was making these excuses for her father. Tell him to lead the prayer. The Prophet said again, as if she had not spoken. She tried again, this time suggesting that Umar should take his place. Tell Abu Bakr to lead the prayer. He reiterated. Aisha had thrown a glance of appeal at Hafsa. So she's telling Hafsa, who now began to speak. She's saying, look, you cannot convince him. But the Prophet silenced her with words, you are even as the women that were with Yusuf al-Islam. Okay, describing about that, like how they're all going against him. Right? Tell Abu Bakr to lead the people in prayer. Let the blamer find fault and let the ambitious aspire. God and the believers will not have it otherwise. He repeated the last sentence 3 times, and for the rest of his illness, Abu Bakr led the prayer. So he said time and time again that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's messenger will not have anyone else lead the prayer. Will not have anyone else lead the prayer. So what happened? Said Abu Bakr Siddiq was kind of away, okay, maybe visiting his family, etc. And she thought as well, let me delay it a bit more, maybe then the Prophet will agree. And why is it that Aisha was doing this? I mean, there's a number of things that I mentioned. One of them is that she didn't want people to start speaking that, so Abu Bakr Siddiq has taken advantage of the illness of the Prophet and can go on to try to be the leader. But here the Prophet time and time again, Abu Bakr Siddiq, I mean, there's one narration mentions that someone kind of let it out that it was Sayyidina Umar, told Sayyidina Umar to lead the prayer. Okay, when the Prophet heard it, he said, "That's not Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr to lead the prayer." Okay, and Sayyidina Umar kind of said, I thought it was the Prophet that commanded me. That's the only reason I went ahead. Okay, now, so there's different. There's a couple of different opinions in terms of when Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq started leading the prayer. Okay, some of the opinion that he led for 17 prayers, okay, with the Prophet praying in his room, okay. Like I said, the difference is, minority opinion is that it started actually on a Friday night, all right, rather than a Thursday night. So there's opinion of whether it started on Thursday night. So we're kind of approaching this last week, you can say, the life of the Prophet. So from a Thursday night, some position is that this was after the Maghrib prayer. We're talking about Isha prayer. So what happens is, the Prophet ﷺ, he attempts to get up because it's time for Isha prayer, and some is an extent of that he goes to do wudu, does wudu as well, but then he faints. And then as he gets up, he says, as he becomes conscious again, he asks, have they prayed? He said, no, Ya Rasulullah. Then he attempts again, right, but he faints. And then when he, a bit longer this time, when he does gain consciousness, he says it again, have they prayed? No. And again he attempts, and to some narration that he did this 7 times. Look at this, people. The Prophet ﷺ, look at how we make excuses for ourselves. A bit of a headache, I can't pray, it doesn't matter, that's fine, I'm ill. Look at the state the Prophet ﷺ is. Remember, throughout, what are we looking at the Prophet ﷺ? He's teaching us. Okay, he's teaching us, and this is him teaching us. Regardless, look at how the state is in, but time and time again, even though he's falling, he's becoming unconscious, he's fainting, time and time again, he's making an attempt to go and lead the prayer. Okay, but then when finally after that he couldn't, that's when he said, tell Abu Bakr. Okay, said Abu Bakr Siddiq. Again, lessons right till the end, lessons for us to learn from. Okay, look at how lightly we take our prayer. Right? We're sitting in a gathering, etc., chilling out with the lads. Oh, you know what? Going out of our way to go off and pray, it's going to be difficult, right? You get up and pray, maybe they'll encourage others, right? Again, your intention is right. Your intention isn't to try to show off. Oh yeah, I'm going off to pray, right? And they say, mashallah, look at this guy, namazi, and all that. But the intention is that maybe people see me and then follow me and go off and pray as well, which they probably wouldn't have. Okay, so the last, according to some, the last is Thursday night, Maghrib, that the Prophet led the prayer. And actually the hadith is that the surah he recited publicly was Surah Mursalat. Okay, that was the last surah he recited publicly. Now, so that one position is Thursday night, Maghrib was the last prayer he led. Other position is Friday night, which is a minority position. And the reason why the Friday position is there is that, remember, Friday afternoons you have Jummah, and then you have the khutbah, etc. Right? And if it was that the Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq was leading the Jummah and doing the khutbah, you would have had a lot more narrations, this mention of this, but there's nothing mentioned about it. And it could be that this is what we were just talking about, the Prophet ﷺ, on the minbar, and then talking about, one of the servants has been given a choice and all this, and said Abu Bakr crying and all that. That could have been the Jummah, that could have been Jummah khutbah. But again, I'm just giving you different positions. It doesn't matter though, okay? There's nothing, this controversy here, controversy there. No, it's nothing along those lines. It's just a case of this is what it is. Another thing to quickly mention, actually, as we're on Thursday, and I'm not going to talk too much about this. Maybe if Allah Ta'ala gives us the tawfiq and we even go on and we talk about the Khulafai Rashidin, we can mention it then. But the Prophet ﷺ on Thursday, actually, and it's noted that he said, look, give me a pen and paper, and I'm going to tell you something to avoid any errors after me, right? And that's when Sayyidina Umar speaks, because we see the Prophet ﷺ, the state he's in, and he says, look how he is. Don't worry about it, leave it, okay? The Quran and Sunnah are enough for us. And actually the Shia kind of take up this point and they say, look, the Prophet ﷺ was going to write that the next Khalifa is Ali, Sayyidina Ali, and Umar stopped him, right? And there's so many points that you can raise about this, and a lot has been said about it as well, okay? First and foremost, for definite that he was about to mention, say that Ali had time and time again, his deputy has been Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, just now as well, leading the prayer, okay? Other things you can mention that, well, you still have a few days before the Prophet passes away, and if he then wanted to mention something along those lines, there's, why didn't it happen after that as well? Okay, why didn't it happen after that? Surely the Prophet said something, the importance of it, then he would have mentioned it after that, right? There was still days to go yet. Okay, like I said, we'll talk about it in detail. We'll discuss it in detail, maybe some other time, inshallah, if we go through the Khulafai Rashidin. But I thought I just mentioned that part in there as well. Okay, so then here you have Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq leading the prayer. Okay, so this is the situation. So the Prophet is really struggling now. Okay, he's really struggling. Just a quick note, actually, because now as we're approaching this here as well, because one of the otherwise I'm going to forget. 12th Rabiul Awwal. So we know that the Prophet passed away on 12th Rabiul Awwal. Okay, and what's mentioned here is that why do you commemorate? Why do you do Mawlid? Why do you celebrate 12th Rabiul Awwal as is the date of the Prophet the birth of the Prophet? Why do you kind of manifest this joy on the 12th Rabiul Awwal? On that date was the date where the Prophet was born. Also, it was the date he passed away. Okay, so actually, shouldn't you be kind of manifesting kind of sorrow on the 12th of Rabiul Awwal? Okay, and the answer to that is twofold. Actually, first, the passing away of the Prophet ﷺ is not a cause of sorrow. It was a cause of sorrow to his companions who kind of lived with him, and you'll see the disarray in the heart and the minds of the companions when the Prophet ﷺ passes away. You'll see that they lived with him. He was there one moment and not there the next moment. Okay, but it's very difficult because when you're with that person and then suddenly they're not there, that's hard. Okay, we went there for us. The great victory of the Prophet ﷺ was he's going to meet his Lord, and this is when the lover and the beloved were united, when all the veils were lifted. Okay, that's the reason. Number one reason. Number two is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, rejoice in mercy and blessings. That's a command. Okay, say to them, the blessing of God and His mercy in that let them rejoice, not even commemorate means, rejoice, display happiness. Okay, this is better than everything that they gather unto themselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not said at times of adversity, mourn. He didn't say that the sunnah is you rejoice in blessing. Sorry, he said that the sunnah is you should rejoice in blessings and in mercy. The sunnah is not that you mourn and grieve at times of calamity. Okay, you have sabr. The point is you have sabr. Also, obviously, when the Prophet ﷺ, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ said that my life is good for you and my passing away is good for you. And then when the Sahaba ask, we understand how your life is good for us, how is your passing away good for us? He says, your deeds are presented to me. And if it's good, I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make dua for you. And if it's something bad, I also ask forgiveness for you. Okay, so this is time and time again. I mean, we've covered it in detail, but I just thought something that I'll mention. Then you have actually one of the conversations of Sayyidina Ali and Sayyidina Abbas, right? Because they see the situation of the Prophet ﷺ, and they said, we've got no clear indication. They don't know who the next Khalifa would be, etc. But it was kind of left to how it was. Okay, it was left to how it was. So then you have the kind of the final instructions. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ talks about, he goes, remove polytheists from Arabia, from the Arabian Peninsula. Okay, treat delegations as I have done, and send forth the army of Usama. These are some of these kind of final instructions. Okay. You have what you can call the last glimpse of the Prophet ﷺ. And according to me, I think so that there's one after this as well, but let's mention this part anyway. So he gets this sudden burst of energy, okay, and he walks to the door and he watches his Ummah pray, Fajr behind Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, and he's smiling, okay. What he does is then he comes, he sets out, and he heads towards the prayer. Okay, he sets towards the prayer, and there's all this kind of commotion from everyone. And Abu Bakr Siddiq kind of realizes it's the Prophet ﷺ. So he steps back, and the Prophet ﷺ instructs him to continue. But then again, he steps back. Now here, there's a difference. I've seen kind of two versions here. One is that Abu Bakr Siddiq continues the prayer and the Prophet ﷺ sits next to him and prays. Right? The other is, no, he comes back. He does not continue the prayer, and the Prophet ﷺ then leads the prayer. Right? So that's the two kind of different versions here, that even at this stage, Abu Bakr Siddiq does not lead. He still, he kind of refuses to, this is the respect that they have for the Prophet ﷺ, kind of the one time that you can not obey the command. Saying that Ali, right at the start, when they were doing that writing, and the Prophet ﷺ tells him to cross out the messenger of God, and saying that Ali says, no, I can't do it. That's refusing a command of the Prophet ﷺ, but because out of respect there. Okay, it's a different thing, they out of respect there. So that's the two kind of versions here, whether he continued or he kind of stepped back and the Prophet ﷺ then led the prayer. Okay, then you have his final admission. He says, guard the prayer and look after those who are under your care. Okay, guard the prayer and look after those who are under your care. So then you have also coming to his final moments. Okay, so the last day, Sunday, he asked Sayyidah Aisha, how much money do I have? Okay, and all he had was just a few silver coins. I mean, let's just say, I don't know, 6 dirham or something along those lines. And what he says is, give it to the poor. How can I answer, look at my Lord, I can go in front of my Lord and say, look, this is what I've got. He says, give it to the poor. Okay. What also he had was actually armor. His armor had been given as what you call collateral to a kind of Jewish person who had given them, I think it was barley, etc., in return of it. And this was the state, the best of creation. How money was coming from all over, the leader of them all. This is the state he passed away in. He gave away everything. He didn't have anything left. Okay, he didn't have anything left. Even when he he woke up, like he was fainting a lot. As soon as he would wake up out of unconsciousness, when he could become conscious, he would ask, say, Aisha, have you given the money? And obviously, her job at the moment is to look after the Prophet ﷺ. It's probably not top of the list. But yeah, I'm going to give it. But he's like continually reminding her, give it. And one version is that then he tells Sayyidina Ali to then go and distribute it. Okay, so he tells Sayyidina Ali to go and distribute it. And Sayyidina Aisha actually mentioned that when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, that there was only a bit of barley, wheat, that they had. And actually this continued for a long period until she kind of realized, wait a minute, this is going on, this has not finished, has been going on for so long. Right? And then one day what she does is she kind of checks it, she measures it, okay, how much it is. And after she measures it, then it quickly finishes. So there was barakah in that it just continued. Only after she got realized and she started measuring it, that's when then finally it finished. Okay, that's when it finally finished. Then you got the kind of almost last moments of the Prophet ﷺ. So he sat up and looked from the window. Okay, sat up and looked from the window. And like I said, some version is that this probably is the last glimpse of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, and Fajr on a Monday. And Fajr on a Monday. And Anas ibn Malik, he mentioned that we were about to break our prayer in excitement. So the Prophet ﷺ sits up, he looks from the kind of, you can say, window, he puts back the curtain, and there's all this kind of excitement, emotion in prayer, during prayer. Now, subhanAllah, look at this, imagine this. Remember the Qibla, right? So if I'm looking towards you, the Qibla is forward. This is the way you're facing. The Prophet ﷺ, the house of Sayyidah Aisha, is towards the left. Yet they're kind of looking away that way to see what's happening with the Prophet ﷺ. They notice the Prophet ﷺ. Anas ibn Malik describes it as well. And they kind of see the Prophet ﷺ. And there's all this excitement. And the Prophet ﷺ smiles, seeing his ummah praying. You imagine this, like, how proud he would have been of them. And he smiles, looking at this. So this was the kind of the last glimpse, I would say, that the Sahaba had of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? And he slipped in and out of consciousness. He slipped in and out of consciousness. He was cradled in Sayyidah Aisha's lap. Right? Let me quickly mention that part actually. I'll just mention actually, I was going to probably read it out to them, but so what happens is that, so she kind of takes the Prophet ﷺ and cradles his head Mubarak, and subhanAllah, look at this, the Prophet ﷺ, his final moments, the lap of a woman. When we talk so much about women rights, etc., look at the final moments of the Prophet ﷺ. And how much honor is given to women. Okay, specifically here we're talking about Sayyidah Aisha. Okay, excuse me. So what happens is that the brother of Sayyidah Aisha walks in, and the Prophet ﷺ sees the miswak. Okay, and he wants to, and I suppose she understands what he wants, and he would love to do it. Okay, and she gets it, and it's a bit hard. So what she does is she kind of bites it. She kind of, I suppose, mixes the saliva with it, and then hands it over to the Prophet ﷺ. So she's mixing the saliva at that time, and look at all these little things that are happening. Okay, the honor that Sayyidah Aisha is getting. Okay, the honor Sayyidah Aisha and the Prophet ﷺ, and she speaks about how when he's using it, and he's there cleaning his teeth, and this is him preparing for meeting his Lord. Okay, so these were his final moments, and this is what he did. Okay, with miswak. And then you have the last thing. The Prophet ﷺ is talking about he mentions ar-rafiq ila, okay, to the companion supreme. Okay, and he repeats this. He repeats this until he breathes his last breath just before going to some Dhuhr, some after Dhuhr. So he breathes his last just before Dhuhr. Eternal peace and blessings be upon him, his family and his companions. Okay, and this was the passing away of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? And look at these little moments. Again, we'll mention a bit more on Friday. We'll go over maybe a few narrations, etc. Bit detail, but I just wanted to quickly kind of cover this aspect of it. We are going to probably go over today as well, inshallah. So just be prepared because there's a bit of other stuff I want to go through as well. Okay. So then you have the kind of, you can say, the succession of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. So that Aisha began to loudly kind of and was joined by the women of the house. The Ansar realized what had happened. Okay, immediately. Okay, then you have the kind of reactions of some of the people. So what was actually happening was that everyone was just camping in the masjid. They're just camping in the masjid because of the Prophet the state of Prophet. Although I think what's happened is now, say Abu Bakr Siddiq is not there, right? Because don't forget, they've just seen the Prophet smiling, and he probably thought, you know what, the Prophet got a bit better, so he probably went off to see his family or whatnot, to his house far away. So he was not there, and then you have this different, the kind of different reactions, okay, and you have Sayyidina Umar's reaction, this furious denial, okay, and remember, we described time and time again, this was the Prophet ﷺ. He was indestructible. Time and time again, miracles after miracles. And there's not just, someone mentioned, if the Nuh lived this many years, then imagine how long the Prophet ﷺ will live. Okay? And he starts shouting, look, it's the Munafiqun. They're spreading this. The Prophet ﷺ has not passed away. And he says, I'm going to chop off the head of the person who says that Prophet ﷺ has passed away. So there's denial. Okay, there's denial. And you go, look, Musa Islam went to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 40 days. The Prophet has gone, he'll come back. Okay, he's gone, he'll be back as well. Okay, he'll be back. You have the likes of Uthman who became mute, just silent. So then Ali fell to the floor as though he's paralyzed. Okay, he fell to the floor as he's paralyzed. Then what happens? Then you have the calm response of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. So he returns and he goes straight into Sayyidina Aisha's house. And he kisses the forehead of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, you were pure in life and pure in death. Okay, you were pure in life, pure in death. I'll see if I'm going to cross this here. So then you have the signs which Abbas had been the first to see had soon become apparent to others, and before the advent of death, Ayman had sent word to his son that the Prophet ﷺ was dying. Okay, we're talking about Usama here. While he was speaking, Abu Bakr arrived. So we're speaking about Umar here. Arrived on horseback from Sun, for news had quickly spread over the whole oasis. Without pausing to speak to anyone, he went straight to his daughter's house and drew back from the Prophet's face the cloak with which they had covered him. He gazed at him and then kissed him. Dearer than my father and my mother, he said, you have tasted death which God decreed for you. No death after that shall ever befall you. Eventually he drew the cloak over his face and went out to the throng of men whom Umar was still addressing. Gently, Umar, he said as he approached. Hear me speak. Umar paid no attention and persisted. But recognizing the voice of Abu Bakr, the people left Umar and turned to hear what the older man had to tell them. After giving praise to God, he said, O people, who has been wont to worship Muhammad, verily Muhammad is dead. And whoso has been to worship God, verily God is living and dies not. Then he recited the following verses which had been revealed after the battle of Uhud. Muhammad is but a messenger, and messengers have passed away before him. If he dies or be slain, will you then turn upon your heels? Whoso turns upon his heels will thereby do no hurt unto God, and God will reward the thankful. It was as if the people had known of the revelation of this verse until Abu Bakr recited it that day. So, not known, sorry. So, Sayyidina Umar kind of mentioned as well that it was like I heard this verse first time. They took it from him and it was on all their tongues. Umar said afterwards, when I heard Abu Bakr recite that verse, I was so astounded that I fell to the ground. My legs would no longer carry me, and I knew that God's messenger had died. Okay. Now, I just want to kind of mention a bit here, because people also take this, when we always talk about loving the Prophet ﷺ, etc. They mention this, just listen to what Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq said, right? And don't do too much praise, etc. and all that. Remember, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq was specifically, and the reason why he spoke like this, he was specifically aiming it at Sayyidina Umar. No one's going to come in front of Sayyidina Umar apart from Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, right? Anyone else, he said, I'm just going to chop your head off. And that's where Abu Bakr had to be that leader there to calm him down. And these were his words. And they were specific to Sayyidina Umar. Okay? And obviously people tend to take this and, oh no, look at this. And you're praising the Prophet too much and etc. whatnot. No, that was the purpose of it. Okay? So you need to understand the situation where certain words are mentioned. Okay? Understand the situation. Anyway, so you have Abu Bakr Siddiq, actually at that time when he rises on the minbar actually, when he's mentioning this. He rises on the minbar, although he does not go all the way to the top. No one stood, and again look at the honor and the respect for the Prophet. No one stood at the top of that minbar until it existed, okay, after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just a few other things, and then actually we will go over the inside of the Rawdah. So the question of the successorship, all right? So what happens is the leader of the Ansar held a meeting the next day, okay, in Banu Sa'idah. And when the news kind of gets to it, what happens is, say that Ali and the families, etc., they kind of distance themselves away, and their focus is on the Prophet ﷺ, the burial, etc., all of this stuff. Excuse me. So the leader, Ansar kind of went and they said, we're going to start deciding, okay, who's going to be the leader here? There's going to be a leader here, different that. So these kind of conversations took place. So then what happened then? Said Abu Bakr Siddiq and said Umar had to go then. They went there as well then. And then after some debate, regardless of this and this, so Umar kind of ended all the discussion by saying, look, I swear my allegiance to Abu Bakr. Okay. And then what happens? Everyone then accepts it. Okay, I swear my allegiance, everyone accepts it. I'm just going to quickly show you where that is actually. So when you go to Medina, so just give me a second, just a bit slow. Saqifa Garden. So if you look at this, you can see there, top left is where it was. So this is where this kind of meeting took place, you can say. Right, so again, it's close by here. Most people, they tend to have their hotels around the back. So the front end here is where the Rawdah Mubarak, and then the back end people tend to have it around there, and so it's close by to that. Okay, so just to let you know that's where the meeting point was for this. They've still kind of kept it, maintained it to, everyone knows that was the area. Okay. So yeah, you had that, and that's kind of the session. So this is when then Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq kind of becomes the leader, the next command. And we won't discuss too much about it, because then again you've got about what happened, because there was talks of then Sayyidina Ali, why didn't he not take bay'ah after a while? Then he took it, but remember he was busy with all of these matters when it comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But again, if we move on to the next topic in terms of the Khulafai Rashidin, we will discuss all of this then. Then you have the burial. So the Muslims, they had no guidance, okay, on what to do next, okay, knowing that there were special rules applied to the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, so in Abbas, so the Ali, etc. There's one version that they fell asleep and then they were instructed to wash over their clothes, because they never knew how do you wash the body of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, and then they were instructed by Jibreel Islam to wash over the clothes. Then it was kind of the family members were the ones who would be doing all of this, and then there was this unique way of praying over, right? A unique way of praying over. So it wasn't what you can say your kind of normal janazah, basically. So the janazah of the Prophet ﷺ was over 3 days. Muslims would enter, say, the Aisha's house in groups of about 10 or so. They perform the takbir, recite salawat upon him individually. So that's kind of everyone, like 30,000 plus or around about that figure, got a chance to say their own personal farewell to the Prophet ﷺ, right? And Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq actually mentioned that he remembered the Prophet ﷺ saying that a prophet, Allah SWT takes the soul of a prophet where he wants him to be buried. So a prophet is buried exactly where he passes away, hence why he remains there then on that, you could say, the bed, that bed in the room of Sayyidah Aisha, right? And that's where he's going to be buried. So Abu Talha dug a kind of a grave there, and then the Prophet's family lowered him into it, right? So the Fatima actually, she walks in and she sees the grave and she starts to shout and say, you know, how could your souls have allowed you to throw sand over the face of the Prophet ﷺ? I mean, you can imagine, you know, the daughter, the emotions that she's going through, etc. Okay, so Anas mentions that the day that Prophet ﷺ entered Medina, everything became radiant, and the day he left it, the whole world darkened, and we did not know where to run, or where to turn. Okay, we did not know where to turn. Okay? Peace and blessings eternally, everlasting upon him. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So that's the seerah. We have gone through it in a lot of detail. Inshallah, at times people will have been confused, etc. So I apologize for that. But I tried my level best to cover off as much detail as possible as we can. And obviously it's going to be there for people to refer back to, inshallah, as well. So they do make that kind of a habit of doing. What I want to spend now, the next kind of 15 minutes or so, we're going to look at, because I'm promising it sometimes, so I need to do it, is the inside the Rawdah Mubarak. Okay, so there are a lot of images, etc. to go through. Hopefully you're not going to get confused. What I want to start off with here is we're going to go through a video, YouTube video. It's a 3D view of everything, and I'm going to speak over it. And this is not me taking a shortcut. So I covered a lot of stuff, but then I thought people might get confused. So I want to start off with this, so you got that in your mind of how the setup is, and then from there we can then move on. Okay, from there we can move on. So let's start off with that first. Hope everything will go well. So my computer seems to be playing up a bit as well. Oh, screen's all going all over the place, but I'll still try to manage, inshallah. Okay, message me if people are getting confused, etc. I won't probably be able to see the chat, but maybe just message me direct. Okay, here we go. I'm hoping the mouse will probably work as well, but let's go. Bismillah. So here you go. This is the entrance there. That when people enter in, so that's the door of, say, the Fatima, entrance to the house. Okay, so this part, I think they say is bed. I don't know about that really, but still, that's the entrance is there. Okay, so we're going to go through these, some of the pillars. So that's Tajid Mimbar. There's one of the Mimbars there actually, there, and then obviously you got the pillars as well. So here we go then. And the house of Sayyidina Fatima is actually under, so that's the entrance, like I said, but the house of Sayyidina Fatima is actually under that area, or kind of the whole area that we have the Jalian, etc. That the house of Sayyidina Fatima comes within that area as well. I remember we've already gone through the houses. I've shown you how they were, the setup, etc. And this is where the Prophet ﷺ would pray tahajjud. You can't see this area, it's inside area. That's kind of the entrance to the actual Rawdah Mubarak as well here. Here you go there. I'm going to show you some images later as well, actually, and then you can understand exactly how it is. What you're going to be a bit confused now is, and again we'll break down as well, the different I suppose the layers or what's built around the room of Sayyidah Aisha. Okay, that's where people get a bit confused, and actually how the graves are situated. Right, so we're going to look at that now. that you can just see, but again, the spots marking where they'll be level with the face Mubarak of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, then obviously then his two companions. And that's just to understand that where you are level. And there's markings on the other side as well. Okay. Okay, remember when we go for salami on that video, I showed you, it's that top end there. That's where we walk across. And then we're looking at, so looking forward, that's the Qibla direction is looking forward. So here, that's the house of Sayyidah Aisha there. And I'm going to show you some images there. On top, you can almost see where there's a small dome, okay, white dome, and then later on, a dove covering all that area, so you got the green dome. Here, you can't really see much, but they're situated crossway that way. But I'll show you the images later. So you got the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, then about from his chest level, the head of the Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq starts moving across, and then obviously you've got the same for Sayyidina Umar Farooq. There are two spaces that are mentioned that are left potentially. One of those spaces will be taken by Sayyidina Isa when he returns, right? When they describe obviously when it was described about the soil, they said the soil was not raised too much and it was not too much to the ground as well, but you can see a bit there, right? And actually I'll speak about this later on when they were renovating or suppose building the walls, etc. You had some of the things that happened then. Okay, so that's where the graves are. But don't worry, I'm going to cover this again. I just wanted you to see a bit of an overview of how it is. Okay, and there you can see the marking on the floor again. And as you see outside with the Jali Mubarak, where you have the three holes, they are level with this. So the first one, as we're approaching, the first one is level with the face of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The second one with Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, and the third one with Sayyidina Umar. So the saying here is about 10 feet away. So the Jali itself is about 10 feet away from the grave itself. And then obviously we stand even further back as well, because you have the kind of the patrol police in front as well to ensure that we don't get too close to the Jali as well. Right. Now this is, like I said, the structure that was built. A structure built by Sayyidina Umar Ibn Abdul Aziz, and it was built in this kind of shape, so that because this was the shape that people would see for centuries upon centuries, for so many years, and like I mentioned it, and they didn't want this to be used as like a people started doing tawaf around here. And this is just mentioning how when there was a fire, and then the restriction after the fire, and then certain things are built. But again, I'll mention all that once the video finishes. But that hopefully people are kind of comfortable and understand how it is. Now we're just going to move across. It's going to try to show some of you've got the pillars that we will cover. But again, imagine this, straightforward is the Qibla. Okay, straightforward the Qibla. You got the Mimbar there as well, and you got the Mihrab there as well. Right, you can see both there. Okay, we'll just quickly see a bit of this, and then let me just kind of put this part on actually, because we're going to cover this and you'll understand it. This is going through the different pillars, right? And there you can see the green dome. There's a small dome actually on top of the room of Sayyidah Aisha. That's the inner dome, known as the inner dome, white dome, small one. I'll show you the images of that. And obviously higher up then you have the main dome. And then this is all around the Jali Mubarak. This was actually made of wood first, but then it was replaced. Okay. And that is, so many centuries old as well. And again, you've got where some praise, etc. Now this here, I think I just realized I haven't basically put an image on that, but there where it is there, so where you would end up if you were praying there, if the Imam is praying there, where he does the sajda would have been where the Prophet's feet would have been when he would pray. Okay, because the actual location or the area of it, they've put the Mihrab there as well. Here you can just say moving across now, these are where the Jalian now. Okay, this is, like I said, the video I showed you when we're walking across, and people can see when we go to give salam. But again, here this is showing the different the pillars. You've seen images here, obviously the Jali, and they move across. So the middle section, remember, that's what we're looking at, and that's where it's level with the graves. Okay, so here you go. You got the viewing holes there they just mentioned, and then on the right there, obviously you have the house, the room of Sayyidah Fatima. And that's where the entrance is as well, actually. And this here, you got the cloth over. That's over that. You can say like that kind of that different shape they've made. That's what that covering is over, right? Like I said, here's the side entrance there. Let's say the Fatima's house, and that's where the entrance is from. Okay. There's actually a door on the other side, but that's not going to be used. Okay, inshallah, everyone understands that and are comfortable with that. Okay, let's move on then. First of all, I want to do is let's go through the pillars first, so everyone kind of familiar yourself with the different pillars, then you can understand it. So you have, let me just bring up the different pillars. So this kind of shows you all of the different pillars. Okay. So here, as we're looking at it, the Qibla is downwards, right? The Qibla is downwards. North is upwards. Qibla is downwards, and you can almost say where down the bottom is like I said, when you walk across and you give salam. Okay, but that's Riyadh al-Jannah. I'm sorry. Yeah, Riyadh al-Jannah. Prophet ﷺ mentioned that there's a piece of between my house and my member, and this is a part of paradise. Okay, and even you got the platform there for azan. This is actually where Sayyidina Bilal would give azan as well. Okay, then you have here the different pillars situated, so you get an understanding here, and you got the different shapes there as well. Okay, so hopefully everyone is okay and familiar with that. So let's just quickly go through the different pillars. Sorry, which is a bit slow. Pillar of Tahajjud then. That one it's the one, like I said, it's you can't really see it, right? It's one that you can't really see. Okay, so that's almost like an old picture there. And this is where the Prophet ﷺ would pray the Tahajjud. Then you have Pillar of Aisha. Apologies, like I said, it is a bit slow here. There you go, that's the Pillar of Aisha. I'm just going to quickly tell you a story actually. Pillar of Aisha was loading. We went on Hajj, and we were about to leave. I think it was the day we were going to leave, or the day before. And it was this thing of you don't get a chance to, at that time, you start booking and all that. So Riyadh al-Jannah, and we decided, you know what, let's go. And wherever kind of, we read enough and then off we go. And what actually happened, and pushing and shoving, we didn't push and shove, but people pushed me here, and then someone just got up and said, I'm about to leave here, come and read here, right? And subhanAllah, when I got there, I read, after I finished, I looked above me, and actually I was praying there at the Pillar of Aisha. Okay, it's the pillar of Sayyidah Aisha. Now, there's so much reward of the pillar of Aisha. Sayyidah Aisha reported to have said that in the mosque there is a spot near this pillar that if people were to know about it, they would have to cast lots to be able to pray there. Okay? And they asked, "Oh, mother of the believers, where is it?" She remained quiet. When they left, her nephew Abdullah ibn Zubair stayed behind to ask her about it. He left his aunt's house and walked straight to this pillar while his companions looked on. Okay? And they realized she informed him of the location, thereby determining the pillar in question. It's also been recorded that Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, Sayyidina Umar, and Sayyidina Zubair used to pray there frequently. Okay, meaning they were all aware of the significance. People have been praying there ever since. So that's the pillar of Aisha, really important here. And again, at the top there, it tells the pillars. The names are mentioned there as well. You can see the member there. Sorry, the mihrab there, and actually you can see the member towards the right as well there. All right, so that's the pillar of Aisha. Next one is the pillar of delegation. This is towards as you're facing and you've got the Qibla. This is kind of hold on one sec, it's not gone up. Sorry, just thinking about it. There you go. This is toward the left. So as you're facing forward, it's towards the left. Pillar of delegation, meaning this is where the Prophet would meet the delegations. There. And then next to this also you have the pillar of guard. Now it's also mentioned that this is named the pillar of guard, or it's named the pillar of Sayyidina Ali. Okay, because he was where they would stand. The guard would stand to guard the house of the Prophet ﷺ, and Sayyidina Ali as well. So behind this is the door, which I'll show you a image of later on, inshallah. Okay, so that's the west side door there. Right. Next. Again, I'm not going to give too much stories on the back of it, but you can speak a lot about each pillar. I just wanted to kind of mention the pillars. The next one is the pillar of street, so which is the pillar of the bed, is kind of known as. Okay, there you go. Next to it. The pillar of the bed is the kind of southmost of the three pillars. It marks the location where the Prophet ﷺ slept during Itikaf. Okay, in the last 10 days of Ramadan. Okay, his bed was made of kind of, there's a kind of description that they've given, but this is where he sat Itikaf. And then you have the pillar of, let's see what the next one is. The one we've already mentioned basically there, the night prayer. After that, of the tomb, the Hajjat, pillar, shape of the bed, that's fine. And pillar of Tawbah. This one is, I think I've shown this one before as well. Remember, you have the story of Abdul Baba. He kind of tied himself to this pillar, right? And he said he's not going to release himself. And then obviously you have the revelation that comes, and then gets the good news, and then he finally is open. Then you have the weeping pillar. Okay, and this is where the Prophet ﷺ, so his tree trunk, the Prophet ﷺ, before a mimbar was made for the Prophet ﷺ, he would lean against this, right? He would lean against this, and actually it's known as a weeping pillar because when he moved, they could hear the tree trunk crying, actually, you know, this was one of the miracles. So they see the tree trunk crying actually, and the Prophet ﷺ then went and stroked it and said, you know, gave him the option of whether he wants to be with him. Then what they did, they cut it and they kind of dug it in where the mimbar was, basically. So he was still there with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so these are the different pillars that we have. So yeah, I think that's fine. So that's, I mentioned that we're going to go through these, so that was that. Let's have a look now at the kind of setup of the Rawdah Mubarak. I mean, you've seen it and hopefully you will know it now the way it is. But let's kind of look at a few other things. So inside the Rawdah. We'll show a few images first, and then I'll kind of show a kind of breakdown of I suppose like a map. So that's an image of inside the Rawdah. So you know, that kind of the shape all around, pentagonal shape all around. This is the cloth that is put on top of that. Okay, you probably can see. I think from this side. Just trying to see which side it is. So this is going to be I think this will be the front end. Right. Just view a few of the other images. So my kind of screen's not great at the moment, it's just still flickering, so I can't make it quite out. But still, hopefully, we'll get through it. Okay, here, so here you can see the marks there. And the first one obviously level with the face of the Prophet ﷺ. The second one we say the Abu Bakr Siddiq, third one we say the Umar. So here, if you look down low, that's the direction of the Qibla. And that's where people walk by. Okay, that's when they walk past. And obviously you can't see this, but this is past the Jali. Okay, this is past the Jali. You can see it there. This is the entrance, like I said, for the house of Sayyidah Fatima. And the old mimbar is there as well there. You can see on the right hand side there. Okay, and then one last one of the Rawdah Mubarak. So here, this now, on the right hand side, where the Jalis are, and we walk past to give salam. Okay, the right hand side are where Jalis are, and we walk past to give salam. Inshallah. Okay. Here is the door of Sayyidah Fatima that we enter through. Well, sorry, not we enter through. I say at this point now. So who enters? Basically, you've got the cleaners, but even they are like students of knowledge. Okay, they're students of knowledge, and only kind of high VVIP delegations, etc., get a chance to enter. But this is where they enter through. All right. I just mentioned this side. So this is on the west side. There's a door that it's not used. This side's not used. There's got, I think, like a case in front of it now, a bookcase. But this is the west side door. Okay, so when you're sitting in Riyadh al-Jannah, okay, and you look towards your left hand side, this is where this door is. All right. Now I want to go through actually the different stages. So the room of Sayyidah Aisha. I'm going to have like top view on the kind of what we've gone through. So here's the first one. So what you have is, excuse me. What you have is, like I said, it was like a wooden kind of frame. So what you look at, number 4 there, it's in Arabic here. Number 4 is the room of Sayyidah Aisha. Okay, that's the room of Sayyidah Aisha. The 5-sided kind of wall that was built by Aziz is in black there, right? And so I'm just trying to, so you guys understand the location. So if you look down, that's the side of the Qibla. Okay, so north is facing up, right? And downwards the Qibla. So that's the room of Sayyidah Aisha. That's how it looks from the top view there. All right, and I'm going to quickly go through a few other ones now, and then I'm just going to give an overview at the end, so everyone can understand it. There you go. This is again, there's a small dome that's built on top of the room of Sayyidah Aisha, or meaning where the Prophet ﷺ, Sayyidah Abu Bakr Siddiq, Sayyidah Umar Farooq are buried. And what actually happens is that there's a fire, right? There's a fire that takes place, and that kind of destroys a lot of things, and this is when a lot of stuff is kind of rebuilt. And then there's a difference of opinion of whether the existing walls of the room of Sayyidah Aisha were rebuilt again, or those were left and then something was built around it. Okay, this is when the kind of the fire was of the room. Okay, and then you got the small dome back on top of again. There you go. Okay. And at one point then obviously the big dome on top of all of this will look like this as well. Right? And I think it was not, even at that time it was not the blue dome. I think it was coloring blue as well. It's been probably about 150, 200 years where it's become green, and obviously we see it like this now. Okay. So everyone hopefully kind of understands how the setup is. Just a few more. This is basically, and then what I'll show is after this, I'll show the actual, the kind of how the graves are. Or actually, let me show those first, so you understand what that is, and then I'll come back to this. The different stages, right, of when it came to the room of Sayyidah Aisha, different stages it went through. If I can find it. Here it is. Okay, so if we look on the top right, we're looking at, okay, that's how the room of Sayyidah Aisha was. Okay, that's how the room was. And then when the Prophet ﷺ, that's, you see where the bed is there. Now this is when the Prophet ﷺ's grave was then dug. You can see that there. So she still remained there. And then even when her father passed away, so Abu Bakr Siddiq, she's remained there. Although now then what she does is, can you see that partition, the black partition toward the left now? When Umar Farooq passes away, she puts a parda there, she puts a veil there, right? Because obviously he was not married. Now, this is obviously out of respect, etc. She did that, right? And that's when we talk about the parda that was put, etc. But she still remained there, and so these are the different stages of her room. Now let's quickly look at the kind of whole, I suppose, like a map or kind of setup of how it is, the different structures. So you got there. Okay, you've got the Rawdah Mubarak, you've got the graves, the Prophet so moving. So let me just try to understand. So you're looking from the right hand side. That's the way the Qibla is, and if you can see there's where the holes are that you can see from. Okay, the holes there that you look through, and then you see level. The first one is the grave of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, and when you look through that first hole, that's level with his face, and then the second one will be then level with Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, and the third one with Sayyidina I mean, this image itself, it's a bit different, but it's pushed down a bit as well, right? And then you've got the walls around it, obviously, and she obviously said Aisha used to dwell at this place, which is kind of, it's located at the eastern side of the closet. Okay. The pentagonal wall, which was built by Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, right? So what you have is, you had the first extension, okay? So masjid extended south, right? What happens is, some of the houses are destroyed and they're actually included in. The only house that's left is, say, the Aisha's house. That's what's left. So the masjid actually goes forward and those houses are then included, right? But then since after that, no one kind of went any further than that. That was the furthest it went. Okay. Next, you have kind of a solid wall that's built around, say, the Aisha's house. Okay. These are the same kind of blocks as the Kaaba you can see, but there was no door. Okay. What happens is actually when you have this rebuilding, etc. The kind of when they're doing work, they see some feet. Okay, they see some feet, and the great grandson of Sayyidina Umar confirms that, oh, don't worry, these are the feet of my grandfather. Okay, these were the feet, and when they describe it, that it was fresh, etc. as anything. I can't remember whether this was at the time of Umar Abdul Aziz, whether he come down, but then he did not enter the chamber to see them. Obviously, they stood at a distance, but then I think he kind of did not enter to see the feet himself. I think I came across that at one point as well, whether he went himself as well. But yeah, this is when they find the feet of Sayyidina Umar. Okay, and the way they describe it was like so fresh as well, even at that time. Okay, so a structure is built, so this kind of pentangular structure, and it's what people can see for 400 years. You can see that, so that's what people can see for 400 years. All right. You have this talk about the smuggling the bodies. There's mention of this. Then there's this story, and I'll mention the story, but then there's difference of opinion whether it actually occurred or not. So there was a kind of pious person who was in a different country. He was having these dreams, Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he didn't think about him too much. But then when he had him on a number of times, then he went to Medina and he mentioned it to the governor, right? And he had seen these people have been shown to him. I think it was 3 people that have been shown to him, that they're trying to smuggle the body of the Prophet ﷺ. So they're digging in and they're trying to smuggle the body of the Prophet ﷺ. So what he does is he calls a feast. He calls everyone in Medina, come along, everyone come along. Everyone comes, but he doesn't notice anyone. While he was shown in the dream, he doesn't notice the people. They say, look, are you sure everyone's come? They go, yeah. It comes again, they go, oh, there was these 3 guys, they're just workers, they just keep themselves to themselves, and they're not interested. He goes, no, bring them as well. So then this happened again, and they invited again, and then that's when he recognizes these are the 3 people that have been shown to him, and they're arrested. I can't remember where they were from, etc. and all that. But yeah, this is the story, and then on the back of that, this is when some claim that it was dug up around and kind of almost like lead and steel kind of was dug in, so no one can make an attempt to dig in. Although some positions are, a lot of people are saying that, no, that's not true. It's just kind of made up. This story came about later on. But this is, I thought I'd just bring it out there and mention it to you, because that's also mentioned about part of the barrier all around. Okay. So around 650 Hijrah, you have this great fire of the masjid. So everything but the room was destroyed. Okay. Then this large kind of square is built around about 680 Hijrah. And then you have that dome as well. Around about 890 Hijrah, the second great fire, lightning bolt. So the first one, I think, was someone went in with, what they have, the lanterns or whatnot, and the oil is spilled here, and it just caught the curtain, and then this spread. Okay, imagine how he was feeling. But then the second one, you have the great fire, the lightning bolt, and then you have this complete rebuild. Because what they say is after the first fire, they do not go into, so say the Aisha's room, they do not enter that to clean up anything there. They just leave everything there. But after the second fire, they actually go and clean up there as well. That's what some of the positions are, that this is what happened, right? So you have this complete rebuild, and obviously a cleanup of the fire that happened 200 years ago. So after kind of 600 odd years, someone actually enters the chamber, okay? But they don't kind of enter, they're kind of stopping outside as well. And the way the description is given, they describe it like this smelling this fragrance has never been smelt before. Okay, they've never been smelt before. So that's it. Yeah, so that's the kind of different the setup. Hopefully everyone kind of is clear of how it is and how it looks. There was a lot of images there, but like I said, that's why I started off on that, the 3D model, so people are kind of familiar with it and they can understand it. Right? If there are any questions, by all means, inshallah, like I said, the next session, I'll send out the details of it, but we'll try to do it on the Friday. And if there are any questions, by all means, people come along and they can ask as many questions as possible. If people were a bit confused by this, then I'll try to kind of explain it again. But hopefully it is kind of expecting they've understood the kind of setup. My main point was to try to get across, again, you've got this particular shape you've got. That's pretty much what we see. You know, whenever you see images inside the chamber, if people are sending images of actually a grave and all of that, that's not true, that's fake. As you see, that it's just soil there, and that's not even raised much as well, you can hardly tell. It's the outside that's covered off, basically. And that, I think, cloth is changed every, I think, about 10 years or so. It's not every year like the Kaaba. So that's what you see, and it's different shape. And like I said, the reason why that shape was because that's what people saw for so many years. And Umar Abdul Aziz did not want people to try to kind of start taking this as a Kaaba as well and start making tawaf around it. So he made this type of shape, basically. He made this type of shape, okay? And so, yeah, that's what you see. Those are the kind of images you see. But again, when you walk across, basically, you'll see the graves are actually like the horizontal, okay? So 1, 2, 3, as you can see in the images. So hopefully that's been beneficial and people kind of understand it. I have repeated myself a lot just to ensure that people do understand it. And obviously we've gone on for quite long as well, so I apologize for that. But I hopefully look forward to seeing a lot of you when we do the Khatam in person, inshallah. وصلى الله سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه عليه سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.